Welcome to the Gray Path Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tony B. Today, we are joined with the galaxy-wide, famously known Jeremy Todd of the Positive Side Podcast, the podcast that kind of started it all for me. So we are going to talk today about The Mandalorian. Not only is it an awesome kick-ass race of warriors, but it is also an incredibly popular show. So I'm going to just step aside here real quick. Jeremy, go ahead and introduce yourself. Kind of explain who you are.
Tony B, glad to be here, my friend. Love the show. I actually just listened to the show today with my kids, and it was great. My daughter says, "Dad, there's a podcast about Star Wars. This is so wild." I'm like, well, it's a lot more than just Star Wars. Any fandom that she'd be interested in, that's where she can find the show. But it was great listening to the kids. And hey, real quick about me. I'm the host of the Positive Side Podcast. I started my podcast right around 4 years ago in a couple hundred countries around the world, just trying to, just like you, my friend, inspire people, change people's lives, and just be my emotional, authentic self and just talk about this crazy life we live in and just try and get better, my friend. Take chances, live life, love life, and get better, my friend. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it. So we're going to do just a little quick recap for anyone. I mean, at this point in time, I'd be surprised if anyone who's listening to this particular show hasn't watched The Mandalorian, but just in case they haven't. So The Mandalorian is a recent show. There's 2 seasons out on Disney Plus, and it centers around a character who originally was just known as Mando or the Mandalorian, but is actually Din Djarin. And he's a lot like all of us. He's just a guy trying to find his way around the galaxy. So he's the whole 2 seasons, which has been kind of a big story arc, focuses on his unexpected and at first reluctant role as a father. And for you and I both, Jeremy, that kind of ties in. When we first meet Mando, he's just kind of doing his thing. He's tracking people down. He's doing his job, turning it in. And it's just kind of like a 9-to-5, which I think we can both relate to. There's a time in our life when we just kind of went and punched the clock. And there was no bigger calling. There was no greater role out there until things kind of fell in our lap. And for Din, it really kind of fell in his lap when he came across who we now know as Grogu, and everyone kind of just calls Baby Yoda. So, I mean, you're a father. I'm a father. And we'll draw some parallels here between Din Djarin and Grogu. But how has being a father changed your perspective on life?
Well, I pull a lot of parallels from The Mandalorian, and it's little things that he wasn't really expecting to be this father figure, and what's more interesting to me about the whole show is that he always feels like he has to take care of Grogu or of Baby Yoda at all times, no matter what. Always looking out. There's little parts of the episode where he's unscrewing the top of the
ball.
And he's like, finally just gives it to him. It's like we can all relate to those stories about being a father, and it's one of the hardest jobs you've ever had. But it's awesome too. I always relate things in bigger picture stuff. So when I see the Mandalorian and he's fighting people and trying to save him constantly, I picture myself in reality of a lot of things going on, just day-to-day stuff, keeping my kids away from, dangerous situations, telling them life stories and always being protective of them. And then even when I'm upset with them, I still go back and I'm like, damn it. All right. You're still my kids. I still love you to death, but damn it, quit doing this or quit acting like that. But there's so many lessons to be learned in the show. And that's what, that's what, again, why I love your show is that we pull these stories out that we can relate to all the episodes. But for me, I watched every single episode with my daughter, and my youngest boy likes it, but it's really cool because, having a daughter, there's a special thing there with me and her, and for her to like, The Mandalorian and Star Wars as much as I do. And she knows the movie better than I do, and she knows more stories because I'm more of just looking at the action. Like I get kind of zoned out, but she really dials into those stories, and it makes a big difference for her. And what I really love, and I know subconsciously, this is why I get cheesy and I get weird about some stuff like this, is that I know she's pulling stories out of this that I look at it one perspective as being the dad, but she's looking at the perspective of my dad. What is my dad? How does my dad relate to the situation? My dad takes care of me. My dad's a little goofy. My dad always does little things for me. And it's when you watch stories like this and you can pull out stuff for me, it's more interesting to me what she's pulling out of it. And that's the biggest reality with these things that, I'll look over to her and just parts of the show and she'll just be dialed in. And I'm like, man, what is she thinking? But that's the beautiful thing about like movies like this is that They're entertaining. There's lessons to be learned, but really I guess that's the biggest thing for me. It's lessons to be learned, not only for me, but for my kids to be watching me react to it. I mean, I've cried on some of the episodes. I'm such an emotional wreck when it comes to stuff like that, especially when it comes to my kids. But,
I feel you.
That's what I love about it.
So, and I love how you bring that up too, because that is one of the great things. I mean, one about kind of why I do this show is, yes, I mean, especially as kids, kids are so good at pulling out the lessons in the books they read, the shows they watch, because until they reach a certain age where they begin to get jaded and, common society kind of pressures kids to turn off that imagination. When they're young and they're that wide, bright-eyed thing, they're pulling out the lessons that maybe we as adults were not seeing. So I like to go and do that. I like to pull them out as an adult and show them to other people. And one of the things I absolutely just love about The Mandalorian is its real depiction of a hero. And what I mean by that, and let me preface this, we'll come back in on why this ties into the real world. You don't see, I mean, yeah, you see moments where Din Djarin's just fucking badass, man. The first episode, he walks into that cantina and, just don't fuck with him. He gets shit done.
Exactly.
But then what, like 2 episodes later, he gets his ass handed to him by a rhinoceros and he almost dies. And it's little baby Grogu who saves him. And I love that, because how many times we're going to talk about this as fathers, but even if you don't have any children, how many times in life has life whooped your fucking ass? Has you gave it your all, and quite frankly, life has just whooped your ass, and then you get saved by what may be the most innocuous looking thing. And when I watched that scene, I think maybe the writers were trying to draw, and maybe not, but maybe they were drawing parallels between how you can sometimes be saved by your kids. Because at that point in time, he hadn't quite yet, Grogu was more of a burden to him at that point than anything. He hadn't quite bonded with him yet. He obviously felt responsible for him, but it wasn't the love that we see at the end of season 2. And I love that, because how many times in the episode do you see Din or Jin just getting his ass kicked by shit, or fucking Jawas strip his ship down and he has to go and negotiate with them? Like, that's awesome. In the original movies, normally the heroes are Jedi and they're just unstoppable badasses.
Yeah, well, when he gets his ass kicked, and this is what it reminds me of these important parental lessons I can pull out of this thing. It's so important for me as a parent to when I go through struggling times and I'm just beat up, my kids are seeing me get beat up. How do I react to that? What are my kids watching me? After I get beat, I went golfing today. This is a horrible analogy. But I went golfing and I had a couple terrible shots, and I'm like, son of a bitch. I slammed my club. And then I look at, and my daughter's looking at me like, Dad, what are you doing? It's those times when you get beat up, and then those are the times your kids are watching, because they're mirrors. Everything you're gonna do, every reaction you have, they're watching, and it's so important to remember that. But I also think one of the biggest things that I pull out of that when I see him getting his ass kicked over and over again, especially by that rhinoceros looking thing, was, whenever I go through really, really, really hard times and really, really stressful times, I have those conversations with my kids. This is what's going on in my life right now. And they're big time adult conversations. And I know a lot of people don't like to have these conversations with their kids. Maybe they're not ready for it, or maybe they're not mature enough, but man, I talk to my kids like adults, and again, it may not be right sometimes, but I think overall it's important to have these open conversations to say, my dad's not perfect. My dad does not know everything. He is going to get his ass kicked. He is going to be this. He's going to be that. But at the end of the day, he's still my dad, and he's going to do everything he can for me. And he's going to learn. He's going to show the vulnerabilities, which are so important. And when you get further on and down in life, and I know you've done an episode on depression, I've done episodes on depression, and we talk about having these conversations when you're older. What kind of impact are we having with our kids' lives when we're talking now about being extremely vulnerable with my life and the things I struggle with, and I'm having bad days and I'm stressed out. But when I'm open with this, it shows an example to my kids as well, that they can be open with me and they can talk about these stressful things in their life. Because if we all walk around like we're a badass all the time and we're kicking ass and taking names every single day, that's not reality. We aren't. No one out there is kicking ass every single day and taking names every day. We all struggle. We all get our asses beat down. But how you react to the situation and how you have the conversation with your kids saying that's okay. We talk about failures a lot of times in our episodes that, man, failures are so important, but we have to share those and talk about them and what we learn from them and be vulnerable. So, I know it's like that's taken the Mandalorian to a next level with these stories that I'm telling. But that's the shit that goes through my head, and that's the stuff I'm like, man, and that's the stuff I pull out of it, because when I watch these movies and these shows, I mean, that's why I watch them. I look for these little things. I look for these learning lessons and these stories that I can learn so much, because, man, I'm just trying to get better just like anybody else. And to share those with my kids, again, is so important for them to see that and them to react and me to be open and them to be open. I know I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but that shit right there is really, really important to me, to be vulnerable in front of your kids.
I actually no, I think you hit it completely on the head. And a couple of the parallels I'll bring to the story is, first of all, that I mean, I'm the same way as a parent, and I've gotten a lot of shit from, my girlfriend. I've gotten a lot of shit from a lot of people about the way I talk to Traylon, because I talk to Traylon about everything. I mean, he and I were in this together. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys for sure.
We're in it together. So, I mean, yeah, perhaps we have some conversations that are maybe above his pay grade right now. But again, I'm with you. I feel like the biggest thing for me is I don't want Traylon to fall into the trap of toxic masculinity. And I know that's a fucking buzzword that flies around, and
yeah,
I try to avoid those, but that is something that is a really real problem. And it's that thing where, and in my case, I mean, obviously I'm going to talk from a male point of view. I'm a man. It's just me and Traylon. So his mom's not in the picture. So I got to kind of play both roles, and I'm not very good at playing the mom role. So I'm going to talk from the dad role, because that's the role I'm really good at. Well, I don't want him to think that being a man is being this unthinking, unstoppable creature, which is what a lot of power fantasies are about. Mandalorian does a great job of showing that. I mean, there's the scene where he reveals himself. He takes at the very end, it's one of the most heartbreaking scenes. It's right when Luke comes to get him. I go, spoiler alert. Sorry, I guess we've made it this far. Spoiler alert. But anyway, at the end of season 2, in the finale, when Luke Skywalker comes to take Grogu, Din takes his helmet off in front of everybody, which is completely and 100% against everything he stands for. And he lets Grogu touch his face. And there couldn't be a better metaphor. He takes off his armor to expose his true self, so that Grogu can see that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to take your armor off. And that is such a profound lesson, because the last thing I want to impart to Traylon, and he's such an emotional kid to begin with, I don't want him to think that he needs to be ashamed to cry or ashamed to have those emotions, to feel that sensitivity. Because if he's anything like me, he's going to grow up to be an empathic person, meaning he's going to be very sensitive to the emotions and feelings of those around him. And if he's raised with this idea that you wear your armor all the time, I think it's just going to cause a problem. And the Mandalorian does a great job of showing that lesson. Another parallel, you talk about how you reacted at golf with your children, and it's hilarious the word you used. You used the word mirror, because I literally an hour ago was having a conversation with my girlfriend, and I said that exact thing. I said, our children are mirrors of us. So when we see bad behaviors in our children, unfortunately, that's bad behaviors in us.
Yep.
So, and you see that in the Mandalorian. I mean, when Cara Dune and Jin are arm wrestling on the ship and he starts to lose, well, Grogu has seen Mando. His response to every problem is violence. So as Grogu sees that Mando's losing, all he knows is to mirror what he's seeing, and he tries to force choke Cara Dune. That's just, it's funny. It's built up for laughs from the audience, but it's such a true example of how we have to be mindful of what we present, because there are little eyes watching.
That season 2 finale too. It's funny, that's what you take out of it, and it's so true. Exactly what you're saying is exactly true. What goes through my mind, when I see that, is like this time of year, kids sending their kids off to school, and Grogu's leaving. There's that scene where he's like waving goodbye.
Yeah.
At the very end, you're like, I'm like heartbroken. Like, my kids are gonna be leaving. My oldest will be 15, so I've got a few more years of him being an asshole to me, and I'm okay with that. I'll take the next 3 years of punishment. So in one breath, I'm like, I can't wait to say goodbye to him, but the other breath is like, man, that is gonna be reality too, right? I mean, it's gonna be saying goodbye to someone we love, and you could use that parallel on so many things, with and maybe even an elderly loved one passing away, or a friend passing away, whatever the case is, and saying goodbye, and knowing that it's not over. I hope to, look at the other side that maybe we'll get to meet again. Our energies or souls will meet again at some point. But man, it's just such a great parallel too, because at this time of year when kids are waving, their parents are waving goodbye to at the school or at the bus stop, or everyone's crying Niagara Falls. But that's what's happening too. That's what I pull out of that too. I thought that was so interesting. That's one of my favorite scenes by far, because I use that in so many different examples of my life. I use it a lot of times for death too, like waving goodbye, and he gets down, it's like his final goodbye. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. I've been in multiple situations where I've had to say final goodbyes to family members and friends, and man, it's so brutal. And you understand that when they're leaving and you're leaving and you're waving goodbye. And I know this is getting really, kind of emotional and kind of weird, but it's just, that's the stuff that I pull out of that stuff, because it's so symbolic of shit that happens in everyday life. And that's what's beautiful about these shows and these movies, is that one thing may mean something to somebody and may mean something to somebody else, but there's so many different things you can pull out of it. And then on top of that, it's just a great story, and it's a great series. And I don't even know, are they doing another one? I would assume they are.
Yep. Season 3 is, I actually think it's filming right now, and there'll be a lot of tie-ins. So like Ahsoka Tano is getting her own show that's going to tie it in. There was supposed to be a show about Cara Dune, but that actress got way too political and Disney fired her. So don't know what they're doing there, but they've actually just released the season 3 poster, which, okay, so big spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen it, but it shows Luke with Grogu, and you see Grogu floating a yellow crystal. So there's a lot of fan theories right now that the lightsaber you see Rey have at the end of Rise of Skywalker might have been Grogu's, because it's a yellow lightsaber, and you haven't really seen in the movies and the shows, or I'm sorry, in the show or in the books, there's tons of yellow lightsabers, but in the movies, haven't really seen it except for the one that Rey has at the end of Rise of Skywalker. So
that's pretty dope.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They're doing such an amazing job. And David Filoni, who is he was the guy who did the Clone Wars cartoon and Rebels, he's basically been given the reins, if you will. So he's kind of coordinating all of it, and it's going to be fantastic. Because it should all be true Star Wars, because that last trilogy was kind of a big hot mess. So the shows are really doing a great job of bringing it back up. So another big topic in the show that I was looking at, which I feel is for you particularly will be great to have on to talk about, is bullying, because I think of that scene. So it's in season 2 when Din Djarin meets Bo-Katan for the first time. So he had found out from Ahsoka Tano, he had found information on Mandalorians, and he was like, holy shit, most of the Mandos were in hiding or they all got slaughtered. Like you see that scene at pretty much the end of season 1, where he goes and visits the armorer, and the armorer says, hey, all your brothers and sisters are dead because the Empire found us and we had to fight. So he finds a lead on some Mandalorians, or I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Bo-Katan is the one who tells him about Ahsoka Tano. It was not the other way. But either way, when he meets Bo-Katan, it's on that boat. They're getting their ass beat. All of a sudden, these Mandalorians come out of nowhere, land, and he's like, oh shit, my people. And then she takes her helmet off, and he immediately is like, who the fuck are you? And where did you steal that armor? And she looks at him and she goes, oh, he's one of them. And what she's referring to is Jin is he's an offshoot of what was called the Death Watch. Now, if you haven't watched the Clone Wars show, you may not know what that is. You may not even know who Bo-Katan was if you didn't watch the Clone Wars show, but she was a character strongly featured in the animated show. And she was a true Mandalorian. She lived on Mandalore. And the Death Watch, which were the people who saved Jin when he was a baby, they were kind of like they were extremists. The best way to explain it. They were Mandalorians who were extremists and kind of went on a really kind of fundamentalist extremist route. So that's why Jin doesn't take his helmet off, because he's following these old codes where the Mandalorians used to do that. So when Bo-Katan takes her helmet off, he's like, oh shit, you're not real. And she's like, oh God, he's a fanatic. And they treat him differently. You notice if you watch the episode, he's treated as less than. And then when she sees Boba Fett, it's 100 times even worse, because Boba is he calls himself his son, but he's a direct clone of Jango Fett. Well, Jango Fett was I use big air quotes here, a foundling, in the sense that he killed a Mandalorian and took that Mandalorian's armor as his own. And That did not fly very well with the true Mandalorians. So in both cases, you see Jin and you see Boba Fett being treated as less than by these so-called elitists. And to me, it's just a really good example of how people bully things they don't understand. And I'm going to give you the floor here. I know you have an extensive history with being bullied. So what's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, you can go through life and think you're, and this is for kids too. And then, like, I look back at my life, you know, going through life and thinking I'm just a normal kid, right? And I try and remember like that day that I realized I wasn't like a normal guy, you know, and I don't, that day doesn't really, it doesn't resonate. There had to been some point where it switched to the other side. And I wonder how I, you know, if I was raised a little bit differently, if I would have been told I mean, instead of coming from this loving family at a very young age saying, you're great, everything's fine. And then all of a sudden realize maybe I'm a little bit different. You know, everyone else is getting taller than me. And I'm 5'2" now and everyone's getting a lot taller than me, but here I am. And I'm not getting any taller, you know, it's so, but I didn't really notice it until I got just a little bit older. And I always wonder if there's a day that it clicked, but I can't remember that. But anyways, being bullied, I've been bullied my whole life, right? And I think I look back in some of the tough times I've went through. And, you know, I wrote a book called The Positive Side. And I remember in the book, I remember because I wrote the book, but I remember getting thrown into a garbage can too when I was a young kid. And I had these little glimpses of these memories that are still with me. I'm 43 years old now, and that probably happened when I was 11, you know, something like that, but it's still with me. Bullying is no joke. And anytime I get a chance to talk about it, I think it's important to bring it to the forefront because bullying happens every single day. It happens all the time. And it's getting worse. It's getting worse and worse and worse because we have this, you know, social media. We have, you know, back in the day, we didn't have, I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't have text message or social media, but now we got everything. You can talk shit to somebody and on Snapchat and it goes away right away. You can say whatever you want to anybody and it's almost like invincible, but you can hurt people's feelings and we don't know the long-term effect of that. So anytime we can talk about that, it's extremely important. But what I really like about the Mandalorian, about him getting bullied and Boba Fett getting bullied is how the Mandalorian eventually stayed really, really cool. Like he didn't like fly off the hand. He was, you know, Boba Fett got in a fight with homegirl and they were going at it. And he was just like, chill, wait a second. But I think sometimes it's a good lesson to pull out of there that if you are the bullied one, and I've been bullied a billion times, eventually at some point in my life, I decided that I wasn't going to play you assume that you're going to be the victim all the time. At some point in your life, you have to decide that you're not going to assume that victim role and you are going to be the leader. You're going to come across with a different sort of confidence where, yes, you may be different. Yes, people are going to look at you different, but the way you carry yourself with confidence has got to change. And what'll happen is when you carry that confidence around, it masks or mirrors or blocks the whatever quote air quotes defect that you may have, whether you're too tall, too short, overweight, ugly, whatever you want to, you know, whatever blank you want to put right there. But if you can come up from the place of confidence and get people to actually know who you are, because we all have greatness within. I say it all the time, but it's so true. We may be brilliant at Dungeons and Dragons. We may be brilliant at reading books. We may be brilliant at something, but everyone has that greatness within. And if we can accept that greatness for ourselves first and come from a place of I hate to use the word power because I don't want to have a bad connotation with like, you know, trying to push someone around or anything. That's not the goal. But when you come from a place of confidence, extreme confidence, people look at you a little bit different. But you cannot go into a situation where you're meek and modest and shadowed and worried about what someone's going to say. At some point in your life, you've got to switch that. And it's not about fighting. It's about being calm and cool and collective and knowing that you do have this power within you, that you are great. And when that shifts in a tough situation like the Mandalorian had, he had a tough situation, shit's flying everywhere, but he was calm and cool and collected because he knew who he was truly. He knew his greatness. He knew his strength. And eventually that kind of goes away right away. And all of a sudden now it's a conversation. But for people that are getting out there bullied, I guess it's just one of the most important things is to find your greatness, find your strength, and come from a place of power, of confidence. And when you exude confidence, it blocks a lot of the quote unquote, what you think is bad about you. It'll block that. And then you start having different conversations and people start respecting you a little bit differently. I mean, I've been blessed now that, again, being 43 years old, being 5'2", I've been very, I'm not breaking my arm, pat myself on the back, but I've been successful in business and podcasting and coaching, and I've done a lot of good things. But the reason that is because I think you said the other day in our podcast, what the hell was that? I wrote it down somewhere.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. I was like, man, I know Jeremy wrote that down.
Yeah,
And
what the hell
so
was
much
it?
stuff spews out of my mouth. If I don't have it
was,
recorded, I forget it.
Shit, what the hell was that you said? I wrote it down too. I don't know where the hell it went. But anyways, it was something along the lines of God damn it, I don't remember what the hell it was.
I believe, and maybe I'm getting the words wrong here, but it had something along the lines of having the courage to be yourself.
Yes, having the courage to be yourself.
Yeah,
man, how powerful is that? That ties right into this.
I mean, it does. And I was actually just gonna try. I was sitting there. I'm like, I know Jeremy wrote it down. I can't remember what I said, but I'm pretty sure that was the gist of it. Yeah. And absolutely right. And that's everything that you said there is exactly right, because when people bully us, the first thing I try to tell people is you have to understand, if someone is bullying you, you have to hear what they're saying and then flip it around to, the chances are that's they're feeling inadequate themselves. If they're lashing out, if they're bullying, it's because there's something in them that is either broken or missing. And their only way to put a Band-Aid on that is to make fun of other people. But the other part, and the part that more ties into what you're saying, is I'm really big on to get that shield. And that's the best way I like to think of it, is have that shield that allows bullying to bounce off of. You have to have confidence. To get confidence, the first thing you really need to do is you need to take a good hard look at who you are, and you need to accept the true things that are about you. Now, that's not to say that you use it as an excuse not to get better in life. You find, like, just perfect example of this is I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and they were like, I have a hard time talking to, like, your friends, like the people that I'm really close to, they're weird. And when I read that, I realized there's two ways that you could react to something like that. I think a lot of people would have reacted out of, like, offense. I smiled to myself and was like, you're goddamn right they are. And that to me is what I love the most about the people that are closest to me. And that's because I myself, I have no qualms. I'm one of the weirdest fucking people that I'm sure most people will meet. And I love it because I realized, I'm a hyper passionate person. I get really into shit. I can recite weird ass facts from books and nerd fandoms. And there's nothing wrong with that. I fucking love that about myself. That same memory that allows me to recite 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragon rules is the same reason I can remember what's in a Form 3 policy under the exclusion section. None of you fucking people even know what I'm talking about, but it ties completely into what I do. And I guess what I'm getting at is, one of the things I talk about when I talk about the gray path, because of course everybody asks me, what's the gray path? Well, at the end of the day, the gray path is our own individual life. But to get on the gray path, you have to first figure out who the hell you are, accept who you are, gain the confidence, which is what you're talking about, gain that confidence. And once you've got those tools, you'll find your path and you'll walk that path with confidence. And when people bully you, that shit's just going to bounce right off, because people are, once you come to terms, oh no, my whole life I've been an overweight guy. People look at me. I can always remember as a kid, people saying, fucking fat ass, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you know what? I am a fat ass, but guess what? I can do shit that you can't dream of. And I've not even scratched the surface of my potential. It's just amazing, because you're absolutely right. It all starts with confidence, because we all have something or many somethings inside of us that are the building blocks of greatness. And so many times, because the world is just a shitty place most of the time, we let all the naysayers and the people that are scared to take chances get in our way, and it blocks us sometimes from seeing that greatness that we have, or it blocks us from gaining that confidence. And sometimes and this ties perfectly into the next thing about the show I want to talk about, sometimes, or not sometimes, I think all the time, you really have to come to terms with who you are, gain that confidence, and have the courage to be yourself, accept yourself, and to find your own way in the galaxy. And that just is a perfect little segue into what I want to talk about, which is, in a lot of ways, I actually see you kind of as Din Djarin, because Din's this guy who, his parents were killed. He got adopted into a bunch of people he didn't know. And he kind of, he bought into their Kool-Aid, if you will. But he now that he's grown up, if you will. He's finding his own way and he's doing shit his own way. And I think like you're successful. And I think a lot of your success is because you walk your own fucking path. I mean, one of the greatest things about your podcast and one of the true unique things you don't see in a lot of podcasts is how authentic you are. You don't give a shit. Like you're going to throw it out there and you don't fucking care what the people think. You're going to throw it out there. You're going to be authentic. If you disagree with something, you're going to say it. If you agree with something, you're going to say it. So just talk a little bit about that.
Well, a couple things, when you say I don't give a shit, I really don't, man. I don't, because at some point in your life, you have to make the decision to where what the shit you don't want to say is the shit you need to say. Like the shit that you're masking who you truly are when you don't speak up and you don't talk about what's bothering you or what's on your mind. And that when you hold that in, it's like you're holding who you are back from success and from greatness. It's a couple of things I want to say too, is that, and this is what was going through my head when you were talking to me just a few minutes ago, is that none of this shit is easy either. Like this didn't happen for me. Like I wasn't just one day like, okay, here I am, boom, I got this positive side podcast guy. I mean, it takes a long time. So I would encourage people listening to this episode and listen to either my show, your show, and saying, well, I hear it a lot. Well, Jeremy, it's easy for you. It's easy for you. This shit ain't easy. It's not easy. And I don't want to try and sugarcoat this stuff, but at some point, I just don't give a shit what people were saying. Like you put yourself out there and you hear people saying, oh my God, that was so weird. Why did you say that? I don't give a shit what you, and again, no disrespect. I just don't give a shit what your opinion is and what you think, because and then what's amazing and what's brilliant is when you start doing that more and more often, the people that understand and actually know who you are, they start coming into your circle and you can be more authentic and more real, and you grow that much faster. It's so funny because, I'll start talking to somebody that's, I made this comment the other day. Someone reached out to me on Facebook, or I think it was Facebook or Instagram. And they were like, hey, Jeremy, they're just talking to me. I'm like, well, I hate to stop this conversation, but you know everything about me. I know nothing about you because I put myself on blast. And what I do in my episodes, and when you meet me on the streets, you meet me at work, I'm the same person no matter what. And I've also learned that if you don't, and again, this sounds harsh but it's not. It's really not. If you don't like the person that I am or don't like what I have to say, I don't give a shit either.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not trying to impress I'm not trying to be the person that you think I should be. I'm never going to be disrespectful. I'm never going to be an asshole, but my opinion matters. And my personality matters. What I say matters. And that's one thing I can go off tangent about schooling and businesses and companies. When we go to these places and we don't say what's on our mind, it holds us back. It doesn't allow us to be our great authentic self. And over time, the more and more that builds up, the more and more clouded that gets, and the harder it is. And you get put in this little pigeonhole, and then before you know it, you're 60 years old and you're 70 years old and you're ready to retire. Then boom, your life is over. That's a shitty way to live life. At one point in your life, when are you going to decide to be yourself? Like when is that? Is that, are we going to plan for next week, or was it last week, or is it a year from now? Or, hey, it's coming up in September, I'm going to start being who I truly am. It isn't easy. But it's the best thing about life. It allows you to actually, and this sounds like bullshit too, but you see things more clearer. Better people come to you. More opportunities will come into your life. It blows me away, the opportunities that come into my life, because I just tell people exactly what I think. If it's stupid, I'm like, well, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't say they're a stupid idea. Yeah. I don't think that's a good idea. Instead of just falling in line, you should do this, Jeremy. Maybe you should do this. Well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe I already know the answers. And when you tell me I'm wrong and I suck and I'm not good enough, and maybe I'm like, oh God, maybe I'm not right. And that's what happens over time. But at some point in our life, we have to make a decision that we and this is what we talked about, have the courage to be yourself and have the courage to understand how great you are. When is that going to happen? Well, it frustrates me sometimes when I talk to people, because they're like, well, Jeremy, and that's why I go right back to what I was just saying. It's easy for you. Bullshit. It's not easy for me.
No,
it's you know what? It's easy not to do it. It's easy not to speak up. It's easy to sit back in the back of the room and coddle and get, blown away. it's hard to speak up, but it's a way more energetic. It's way more fun. You learn a hell of a lot more. You have better friends. Your lifestyle's way more important. And this is the last thing I'm going to talk about this because this is kind of cool too. When, again, 5'2", 130, and I got my arms are all busted up. I got this bone issue too. I'm all jacked up looking. But it's interesting because if I look at my life, what if I was like this 6'2" perfect person, perfect looking, quote unquote, perfect looking, and I got this perfect life. Do I want to live that boring ass life? Or do I want to live this life where I'm constantly like, having these conversations and trying to be this cool, random, weird ass dude? Man, that life is so much more exciting and way more fun. Quit being boring. Your life doesn't have to be boring. Your life can be great, but you've got to accept who you are and allow that to come out, and quit sitting in the sidelines and quitting sitting in the darkness and come out and step into that greatness.
So, and the perfect, because again, I love tying it all back to our source material. So our source material is the Mandalorian here. And there's a perfect example of that, because again, I've had people, I get iterations of the "it's so easy." The ones I typically get are, "Well, Tony, you can talk to anybody. So like, it's of course easy for you to do that." Or, "You're smart." And bullshit. None of this has been fucking easy. Nothing that I have achieved. And we're quite similar. I mean, it sounds like we had a little bit different when it comes to the family life, but our young life and our struggle for success sounds very similar. You look at where I was as a kid. I mean, I came from nothing to where I am now, which again, isn't my end point. It's just, my end point is my death. Until I get there, I'm still going. But, and I like to take a few moments, not very long, because it tends to make me uncomfortable and complacent. But I like to look back and I like to see, okay, that's cool. Look at how far I've come. Look at how much farther I have to go. None of it was fucking easy. And a perfect example of that is, and again, spoiler alert if you've never watched Mandalorian, but if you made it this long into this episode, we're pretty well spoiling the whole thing for you. Anyway, that scene after Jin gives Baby Yoda, as we know him at the time, to the client. He fulfills his goal. He comes in, he finds him, he returns him to his client. That could have been it. That could have been Jin playing it safe, which is just like what you're talking about. Being at a job, you do your job, your boss says, "Oh yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. Why don't you just do your job?" And you're like, "Okay, even though I fucking know I'm better than you and I know what I'm doing." Jin walks away, and then he has that turning point where it's like, he got his money, he got his Beskar, and that's it. He doesn't owe anything to Grogu. He doesn't owe, he could just go on with his life and things could be exactly as they are. But he got to that turning point, as I'm sure you've done many times, and I know damn well I've come to many times. And I always equate it to standing at the edge of a cliff. You can continue to stay on solid ground and continue doing what you know. But guess what? Things will never be better than they are at that moment, because it's familiar. What is the thing you always say? Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
Like, you could stand there and think about doing it, or you could just close your fucking eyes and jump. Maybe you hit the ground and die. Maybe you figure it out on the way down. And what does Jin do? He realizes that was his turning point. He could go off and no one's going to think less of him. If he'd have just left Grogu with the Imperials and went on his day, nobody would have thought otherwise. In fact, his life would have been dramatically easier. But he gets a better idea of who he is and where he's going to be. I mean, when we see him at the end of season 2, he is technically the leader of the Mandalorians because he has the Darksaber. Excuse me. He doesn't want to be the leader of the Mandalorians, but look at where his life has changed because he took that leap. And that's something I want my listeners, and I've heard you sprout this in many iterations on your show. I want my listeners to know none of this is easy, and it's going to scare you. And if it's scaring you, there's a good chance great things are on the other side of it. We got to crawl through shit sometimes to come out the other side to a whole new world of opportunity.
100%. Two quick stories on that. I left the job about 4 years ago, quit cold turkey. I was making a couple $100,000 a year, loving life, no bills, perfect house, beautiful house. I mean, the prototypical beautiful brick house, 3-car garage. I mean, just nice house, big house. And I had this great job, and I was extremely comfortable. I decided to quit my job, sell my house, and move to North Carolina. Sold everything I owned, became a minimalist. People thought I was absolutely batshit crazy. But I got to that point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I am tired of this same old monotony bullshit life that is not fulfilling me. So I quit my job and bounced, right? And people still thought I was absolutely nuts that day. And it's interesting too, if I could just a quick little story on that. The job that I left, anybody out there thinking about leaving a job, and I don't want to make this all about jobs, but thinking about leaving a job is, you know, 1 month they're going to say, oh yeah, that guy was great. 3 months from now, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that dude, yeah, he was cool. 6 months, they're not going to remember your name. So don't tie yourself to a job that is not who you are. Fast forward to right now. I quit a job on Friday. I put in a notice that I said, I'm going somewhere else. These people think I have horns coming out of my head again. Reason being is because I'm comfortable. Whenever you find yourself in life that you are extremely comfortable, you have to change things up. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to go out there and quit their job. Whatever that thing is in your life, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you are in a comfortable situation, your life will never get any better than what it is at this exact time, because you will just continue to clock in and clock out, and your life will pass. And sure, you know, little Susie and little Johnny will grow up and you'll have this picture perfect life. Oh my gosh, it's so great. It ends beautifully. Oh, wow, it's wonderful. Or you can continually push yourself to become uncomfortable and take risks in life. Now, looking back, I was scared to death for the last time I made this decision 5 years ago when I quit this other job. I look back and it was scary. It was a tough decision, but I look where I am now 5 years ago. My life is completely different. It's way better. It's way more exciting. There's more adventure. There's more authentic realization of all the bullshit I put myself through to get stronger, to become a better person, to become a better risk taker, and meet people around the country. When I moved all over the country, it was awesome. If I would have stayed in that job and stayed comfortable, sure, my life would have been okay. I would have probably living in the same house and same old bullshit that goes on Monday through Friday, clock in, clock out. But that is, again, a shitty way to live life. So with me quitting this job just on Friday, putting my notice in saying, I am way too comfortable. And this was the conversation. Jeremy, why are you leaving? I'm way too comfortable. Jeremy, that makes no sense. Do you like the people you work with? Yes. Are you making good money? Yes. Do you love what you do? Yes. Why in the hell would you want to leave? Well, because I'm comfortable. And it's a risk. Yes, it's silly. To some people it makes no sense. But if I can go back and hit the rewind button, and when I hit the reset button last time and quit this job, and now where I'm at now, where am I going to be 5 years from now? But if I don't ever take these risks and I don't ever take these challenges, I don't ever get out of my comfort zone and continue to push the belt, my life is going to only get exponentially bigger. Someone told me the other day that it was something that if you stay at the job longer than 2.6 years, you cut your financial income by like 60% over your life. So it's people that work their jobs 30 years of their life, clock in, clock out. Again, no disrespect to them, and it's a great job, and maybe people love what they do, but it's not what I could do. It's not me. Getting out of your comfort zone, long story short, getting out of your comfort zone, taking risk in life, trying new things is crucial and vital to this life, to not being comfortable and not riding off to the sunset. No matter if you're 23, 13, 83, always try and get better, always to do something different, push the boundaries of yourself, because you will be amazed in how great you are and how well you can strive in tough situations. It'd be to be continued what will happen in the next year.
Yeah, of course, as these things often are.
But man, oh man, it's exciting. It's life. It's an added stress. It's getting out of that comfort zone. It's becoming who I am. It's trying new things. It's not listening to what other people think. It's in my gut. It's in my feeling that I got to do something different. So damn it, I'm doing it. So it's not about walking the walk. People say, well, it's easy for you. No, it's not easy. No. It's extremely difficult. But I know deep down, I've got to make a change in my life. And the question is for everybody listening to the show, if you know deep down in your soul, in the crevice of the cavities of your body, that you have to make a change, that you're uncomfortable, what's stopping you? Why wait?
Exactly.
Do something different with your life and watch the greatness come in, because it's just right outside of your fingertips.
one of the things I like to, and this will help people understand why that's such a powerful message is, I mean, it's simple fact in biology that the only way an organism evolves if it is put in an uncomfortable situation. Then basic biology kicks in and it is forced to evolve or die. So if you leave, let's just break it down to simple biological terms. If you have a single-celled organism and you leave that single-cell organism in a petri dish and you never poke it, prod it, put in any sort of adverse conditions, it will go its entire life as a single-celled organism. But once you start poking it, once you start prodding it, once you start putting it in different environments and putting it in uncomfortable situations, that organism now has no choice. It either dies, which is against every biological imperative, or it will begin to evolve and adapt. And I think that's where people get stuck. They get stuck thinking, I can't do this. They lack confidence. I can't do this. What if it doesn't work? And then what happens is those negative voices overshout the positive, you can do it voice in their head. And I'm here to tell you, and I believe Jeremy will back me up here, that happens to all of us. Every big move that I have achieved, we'll just stick to the job situation. Every big move that I have made professionally has been terrifying. When I graduated college, I sold like 90% of what I owned, and I moved to the other side of the country with no idea where I was going to end up job wise or what I was going to do. It was just the confidence in myself that I'd make it work. I landed in all things insurance. I didn't fucking know anything about insurance. I have a degree in philosophy. When Tony's chugging through college and they're like, it's career day, what are you going to be? The last thing I said is, I'm going to be an insurance adjuster. But I landed in insurance, and hey, guess what? I was really fucking good at it. But then guess what? Started to get comfortable. So then it was, let's move back to the other side of the country again. Do we have jobs lined up? Nope. We just fucking went, sold, put everything on the market, went, got here. Looks like insurance it is still. Hated that job. Worked it 9 to 5 for almost 3 years. All of a sudden, I get a real sketchy email, and it's so funny because it was such a sketchy email. Totally thought I was being scammed. Sketchy email from a dude I'd never heard of who found a resume of mine that was like 2 years outdated saying, hey, would you like to be an independent insurance adjuster? And I'm like, there's no way this shit's real, but whatever. Replied to it. Met him at a fucking Subway.
Oh, there you go.
Met him at a Subway. He's like, I'm rolling through the area. And I'm like, this is like an MLM marketing scam or something. And I go and I meet this guy and I'm like, holy shit, it's legitimate. And I was like, I'm going to dip my toe in it. Again, I had experience in insurance claims, but nothing. He was like, we're going to send you in field work and property claims. I'm like, I don't know anything about this. So I'm like, oh, okay.
What'd you call me?
Well, so I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And I did it for like 3 months. And then I was like, I made more money in 3 months working a couple hours a week than I was doing 40 hours a week at the job I hated. So then came big decision number one. Do I quit my job with paid medical and benefits and a guaranteed salary to do something that at that point I was not very good at? And it just like dangled my toe in, and I was terrified because I'm married at the time. I got a kid. I'm like, ugh, and I just was like, fuck it. And without even thinking, I remember the day I sent the email, I was like, I'm done. And, turns out it worked and it was great. And then fast forward a few years, and an opportunity came to quit my own business and go work for someone. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do it. And I did it, and I hated it again. And, then the opportunity came to reopen the business again. And again, I hated it. And again, I was scared shitless, and I did it. And then now, I mean, the most recent ones, I'm on a precipice right now. I mean, literally right now, I have an opportunity where I'm still kind of existing in 2 different worlds with my business. And I got to make a decision. I can continue to try to straddle 2 different worlds to make everybody happy. And I feel that the winds of change, I've been feeling them in the air for a while now, where I'm going to have to make a decision where there's a chance I'm going to have to cut a really good situation in order to chase what very well could be a outstanding opportunity.
Yeah.
And and I'm here to tell everybody, guess what? that screaming voice of you're going to fail, it never goes away.
Oh man.
It doesn't. Sometimes you just got to laugh and go, well, okay, if I fail, I'll figure it out. And it's an
Yeah.
important lesson to learn. And again, to tie back to the Mandalorian, it's kind of what Jin did when he went back in guns ablazing. He knew he was going to be wanted by the Empire. He knew there was every chance in the world he was going to get killed. He also didn't have the slightest fucking idea what Grogu was, or how in the world he was going to take care of him. But sometimes you got to just close your eyes, put on your big girl panties, and do it. Like, that's just what needs to be done. So I want to move on a little quick here. Just some questions I wanted to go over with you as we kind of wrap all this up.
Sure.
So, and we've talked about this question here. We've talked about a lot of this, but maybe you can find a succinct way to wrap it up. But so you had a rough going. I mean, we all still have a rough going, but you had a rough going when you started out. So what exactly caused you to become, I mean, as you're kind of known amongst people, you're the positive guy. How did you get that way, and how are you able to maintain it?
You know, I got that way because I just got, I don't know. I don't know if it's something in my DNA. I don't know. I've really worked on that, having that attitude of gratitude. I started, I was just tired of the person I was. I was miserable. I was broke. I had, I filed bankruptcy. I had no life. I was a fucking loser. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I was a freaking loser, you know? So, but at some point it's like, there's more out there. So I started just doing self-development books, and I know it sounds cliche, and I know it sounds, but it is what it is. And I really started working on myself. And when you make that commitment to saying, okay, your life sucks, it's at the bottom of the barrel, you're miserable, you just filed bankruptcy, you're, you know, I'd say borderline alcoholic, you are an alcoholic, your life sucks. Is this going to be the end? I mean, is this the story? Is this the story? Because there's, you know, you're hanging around buddies that are doing the same shit, and you know, having a good time or partying all the time, but that lifestyle blows. So I started just really focusing in on myself and understanding, man, that there's got to be more to this life than where it's at right now. And I started just reading books. I think some of the first books I read were John Maxwell books. And, you know, I think it was 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership was one of the first books I read. I read The Secret. I read The Alchemist. I listened to The Alchemist, actually. Jeremy Irons reads it on YouTube if you haven't had a chance, or audiobook. It's brilliant. That's one of my favorite books of all time. Then I just started really working on myself and figuring out what makes me happy. Where do I want to be? What does my life look like? And eventually, when you start looking at all these things and you have this attitude of gratitude, and it's a true attitude of gratitude, after you know, in my house when I filed bankruptcy, I remember having to choose between having the electricity on or the gas on. So I either had the heat on or had lights on. I chose electricity. So I had no heat, but I'd plug space heaters in, and I'm living in a house with no furniture on a wood floor. And at that point in my life, I'm just like, man, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And it could have continued to go that way. But I started looking at things like, you know what? Okay, I do have a roof over my head. I've got parents that love me. I've got an opportunity to, and this, like, I'm young. I still got a long way to go. And then I started looking at all kinds of things. I've got my health. I can still walk. I can still go places. I had a bike. I rode my bike to work, which was like 10, 15 miles away. Rode it to work, rode it back, rain, sleet, snow. It didn't really matter. I was just working hard, but I had this drive that I knew life was going to get better. And having this attitude of gratitude of seeing family members and friends get shot and killed in our neighborhood. And you put yourself in these situations like, man, I wish, you know, they wish they would have had this lifestyle. They never got out of it. But I have a chance. Like I have a chance to get out of this after seeing, you know, multiple friends get stabbed, shot, killed, murdered. I mean, you've seen them die of crazy diseases. I've seen a lot of things, and you start putting things in perspective. That really, it just changed the way I thought. So when you say, you know, how did I become this positive side guy? It's all the things, the negative things I've seen. And I knew that's not the way I wanted it to end up. And that's not me. That's not who we are. That's not how you are. That's not how I am. That's not how the listeners are. We do have this innate ability to overcome obstacles. And one of my favorite quotes is, you know, it's I'm going to butcher the shit out of it, but it's like, you know, every obstacle in your life, you've overcome every single one of them. because you wouldn't be here if you didn't. So at 43, I've overcome a lot of crazy shit, getting bullied. I was sexually molested as a kid. I've seen friends killed. I've seen filed bankruptcy. I've been through some crazy shit. I mean, I've had you name the utility. I mean, you could spin the utility wheel. I've had them all shut off. You know, that phone, water. I mean, I've had them all shut off. So I've just been through a lot of shit, man. And it just it builds this weird crust of protection around you to around yourself, to think this is all I've got to protect is myself. I want to be a good I want to be a better person. I want to take care of people. I want to help people. But if I can't take care of myself, I can never help anybody else. So I began to work on myself. I started doing CrossFit years ago. I got my mind right. I read a shit ton of books. I got into podcasting. I listened to a podcast called Every Day is Saturday. My homie, Sam Crowley, really got me started. If you haven't heard his podcast, it's great. I've been on his show multiple times, but he helped me. And I've hired coaches. I've hired people to help me. And I know that I'm not where I want to be, but I know I've come a long way, and I know I'm going to get better, and I know I'm helping other people. So I've got this momentum of going, of all these things I've worked on, all the shit I've been through. And I'm having this attitude of gratitude to say, man, yes, I've been through a lot of shit. However, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. I might not even be here. Now I've got kids to take care of. Now I've got people that rely on me, and I'm responsible, and I don't want to let them down. But I'm very, very grateful for them. I'm grateful for the sunlight. I'm grateful. I mean, I had this exercise I go through damn near every night, where I go through the alphabet for all the things I'm grateful for. I start with the letter A. You know, letter A is always my son Anthony. I'm so grateful for him. Letter B, I'm grateful for the bees outside. I got to change my letters up because it's the same thing over and over and over. C is I'm grateful for this old ass cat we have in our house, but she's always chill, relaxed. I mean, so I go through the alphabet every night of this attitude of gratitude, and that makes a difference. These cheesy things that you hear people talk about, the shit works. I mean, it actually works. You know, so if you're wondering, oh, that's bullshit, that's a woo, that doesn't make any sense. No way that works. That shit works. It works. It works if you want it to work. If you don't want it to work, nothing's going to work, right? Yeah. If you don't want it to work, it's not going to work. But if you want it to work, the shit starts working. And all of a sudden, slowly but surely over time, and we talked about it doesn't happen overnight, but slowly but surely over time, you start developing this attitude of gratitude. Things start getting a little bit better. You start meeting new people. You fire your loser ass friends, and you get new friends that have similar interests. And your life just starts growing and growing and growing, but you just got to be in it to win it, and you can't give up.
Yeah.
So the positive guy, I've been through too much negative shit not to be positive.
That's awesome. I love that. So, we talked about a lot of the stuff I had questions on. So let's, when this was a question I ask every single guest who comes on my show. This is my John Maxwell's 7 questions that you always ask it. This is the one question I always ask everybody, which is, if you had the opportunity to go back in time and speak to any past version of yourself who was going through a hard time, what would you tell you?
You know, it's so funny because this image before we started on the podcast, I was looking back, just, you know, going through the mental Rolodex of photos that are in my head. And there's this photo of me at a friend's wedding. And I was completely hammered, completely out of control. And I was at a rehearsal dinner. After the dinner, we went to this, there was like a pool at the rehearsal dinner. And I remember jumping in the water, destroyed, hammered. No one's jumping in the water. I have no idea why I got in the water. I'm like, fuck it, I'm jumping in the water. I jump in the water. I'm soaking wet. My friend's family's there. My family's there. And I'm the drunk guy that jumped in the pool, and I look like shit. I look like death warmed over me. I was horribly out of shit. I just looked beat the fuck down. And I guess the one thing I would tell myself is get your head out of your ass. And I'm not trying to be the hard ass about that, but man, sometimes you just got to kick yourself in the ass. Quit bitching, quit moaning, quit complaining, quit being this, quit being a victim. That's the biggest thing I would tell that image of myself. What the fuck is wrong with you? Pull your shit together. Get a handle on your life. Because at that point, I was completely out of control. And I think it's also a lesson I take today. I mean, hey, I can bitch and complain about me quitting my job or one of those others. I complain about anything, but quit bitching about it. I just did a podcast about stress. I did 5 hardcore ways to relieve stress. I'm stressed out right now. I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast is stressed out, but at some point, who gives a shit, right? You've got to pull yourself up. You got to take action. You got to get the momentum going. You're the only person that's responsible for where you are in your life. You've got to step up.
Yeah.
You cannot point fingers. You can't blame it on anybody. You can't blame it on your past self. You can't blame it on the person that sexually molested me 30 years ago. I can't blame any of this shit on anybody, because every decision I've made in my entire life has brought me to this point where I am right now. And the only person I can't feel sorry for myself anymore, because I'm the reason I'm here.
Yep.
So if I go back in the time, I would literally be hard on myself. I would say, get your head out of your ass, do something with yourself, step up your game. You're better than this. Because it's funny, because I'm sure people are like, oh well, I would have this big philosophy about what life is all about, and be not me. I mean, get your head out of your ass and do something. Quit bitching, quit complaining, quit being a victim, and step up.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it just takes a swift kick in the ass to get to get moving. And I also just wanted to tie it off by saying, at the end of the day, and I know this is tough to hear, and I haven't talked about it much on my show yet, but I'm sure we will dig into it. I also I'm a victim of sexual molestation as a child, and I guess at the end of the day, it's going to sound harsh. I don't think it's harsh. I think it's really uplifting, but it can come off as harsh to some people. At the end of the day, you're the only one who has the power to stop being a victim.
Yeah.
You can look at yourself as a victim and you can say, poor little old me, or you can not, and you can come to terms with what took place, and you can take your power back. And it's not an easy process, as we've discussed about everything today. None of this shit's easy. It's not like, hey, Tony, guess what? Oh, all that childhood trauma just melts right off. No, that's not the case. But at the end of the day, you are the only one who can make these life changes. So,
for sure.
My normal question I always ask is what your great path looks like. But let's be honest, I think our listeners have a very great idea of what your great path is. And for those who are listening who are not familiar with Jeremy's podcast, I'm going to let him kind of promote himself here in a second. But honestly, go and listen to it. It is literally the first podcast I got into, and it is a podcast I religiously listen to this day, because there's enough heavy shit in the world that we all focus on. It's nice to have something positive and uplifting. And I like to listen to it first thing in the morning, because it kind of sets the mood for the day. So go ahead, Jeremy. Where do people find you? Let's hear it all.
Well, hey, obviously I'm everywhere, and I've been blessed to be doing this now for 4.5 years. So you can Google me anywhere. I would love to connect with people on Facebook, on Instagram, and YouTube. I'm trying to be. I got 203 followers or 201 followers now on YouTube. Not that many, but it's something I really enjoy, because I think having the video is a big difference, because you can see me talking and see like the communications, what like I don't know, the verbal and what all that bullshit means. But when you can actually see me talking, I think it makes a big difference. But connect with me everywhere: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora. I'm all over those things. Email me, jeremy@jeremytodd.com. And email me at random shit too, because I respond to every single email. I think that's so important too, because I as long as I'll do this and forever and ever and ever, if someone emails me, I always respond back personally. And I don't, hey, maybe it might take me a couple of days, but I think it's so important. And I learned this a long time ago, that if someone's going to take, and this is the same thing with all my social media. If you respond to anything on social media, I'm always going to respond back. If you leave a 5-star review, I'm going to talk about the 5-star review, because if you can take 10 seconds or 20 seconds to connect and leave a message, I can take that time out of my life to get back to you, because again, we're all in it together. We all have our independence messages and stories, and I want to learn as much as I can about as many people as I can. So long story short, the Positive Side Podcast, Jeremy Todd, jeremytodd.com, the Positive Side. I mean, literally I'm everywhere.
Yeah, just put in the Positive Side and you're going to find them.
Yeah, you'll find me everywhere. Yeah, for sure.
Hands down. Well, Jeremy, thanks for taking the time out of your day. I mean, this has been awesome. This is hopefully not going to be the first, or obviously not the last time. I'm sure we will probably be hip hopping back and forth on each other's shows. And absolutely. It's been a blast. Just thank you very much for taking the time out of your day. So for everyone who's listening, we got a lot of fun things coming up. This episode, we're recording it Sunday night. It'll be posted tonight, because it's going to be our new episode Monday going into it. This upcoming Wednesday, which, depending on when you're listening to this, you could be listening to this 5 years from now. But for those who are listening to it right now, let's see here, the 25th, which is this upcoming Wednesday, my episode on the Positive Side should be going live. Super excited for everyone to hear that. Yeah, it was a fucking blast. I loved it. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up here. I anyone who listened to the last episode I just posted yesterday, I started dipping my toe into some Disney fandoms. I did an episode on Inside Out, which was very emotional. Just there is crying involved in this episode, but it was a lot of fun. I'm probably going to start doing some more Disney fandoms. It seems to be getting a lot of positive feedback, and of course, I'm just going to continue on with what I do. I've got lots of people lined up to come up on the show, so as always, I just thank you guys for spending your days with me. Make sure to reach out, connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It's The Gray Path. You can email me at seekthegraypath@gmail.com. Just keep in mind, I love you all. If you guys need anyone to talk to, if you just want to gush, you want to tell me I suck, shoot me a message. I love to talk. I can talk to anybody. So as always, I'm Tony B, and you be safe out there.